Hi there, everyone, and welcome to The Daily Gardener, a podcast about gardening, botanical history, and literature. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling, and today is September 20th. Today we celebrate a German botanist, an American botanist, an explorer, and an English poet and novelist. We'll hear an excerpt about the change in seasons, and we grow that garden library today with a book that challenges us to see trees in a new way with profound understanding, respect, and intelligence. And then we'll wrap things up with the birthday of a beloved American poet and his humorous poem about gardening. Well, I don't know about you, but I had the busiest weekend. It was jam-packed with all kinds of things. My brother and sister-in-law came up to visit me up at the cabin, and we were supposed to go to a local celebration called Stagecoach Days. That was the excuse for getting them up to the cabin, and we ended up doing a ton of things that had nothing to do with Stagecoach Days. But two items I wanted to bring to your attention, especially if you're a local listener and you're in Minnesota and you're close to the Twin Cities. I'll bring two of these locations to your attention. Maybe you can add them to your weekend getaway list. The first is Winehaven Winery. This is a beautiful winery. It's located in Lindstrom. It is, I think, the most beautiful winery I've been to in the Midwest. They do weddings, and I tell you what, I would get married there or remarried there. It is absolutely gorgeous. And you know, this year, the grapevines look great in Minnesota. And this winery really does it right because as you're driving up the hill to get to the winery, on both sides of the drive, you are flanked by these beautifully manicured grapevines with, at this time of year, incredible lushness, incredible greenery. And it was one of those moments of serendipity because the winery was just closing. We got there around 5 o'clock. But one of the workers came out to our car and said, you know what, come on in. We can't give you a full flight or all of the normal things we do as part of our signature hospitality, but we can give you a couple of samples of different wines, and we'd love to sell you some wine. So wasn't that nice? In any case, we went in, and the inside is as beautiful as the outside. The people were lovely. And I asked this gentleman two questions. What's your best white wine? Because I drink white wine. And then tell me about the little bee, because a single solitary bee is their logo. And he said, well, let me tell you about the wine first. And he recommended a wine called Nicolette, which is a name that has great meaning. It's a historical name. It's part of Minnesota history, but I won't go into all of that. But I did taste and then buy a bottle of this white wine called Nicolette. It's wonderful. And then he told me the story of their logo, which is this beautiful, simple drawing of a bee. And it's because this winery actually started out as an apiary. They were selling honey, and then they transitioned into becoming a winery. And I think they still do some honey-related work. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on it. But I thought that was so cute and made for an adorable logo. And oh my gosh, even the little bags that they used to put their merchandise in, it was just so cute. And they have a little yellow honeycomb on them. So their marketing is spot on. The location, I just don't think it can be beat. I think it's in my top 10 for beautiful spots in Minnesota. It's just something we stumbled on. My neighbor, actually up in Wyoming, told me about it. And so I just pointed it out and I said, let's go. And we just stumbled on it, and it's just unbelievable. So if you've had a chance to go, you're probably smiling and nodding right now in the car or in the garden, wherever you are. If you haven't had a chance to check out Winehaven Nursery in Lindstrom, you really should. It's wonderful. All right. And then the second place that we were able to go was Lint's Pumpkin Patch. The Lint family pumpkin patch. Lint, the last name, is spelled Lendt. Good German spelling there. Now, my sister-in-law was passionate and adamant. We had to go to this pumpkin patch. In fact, when I diverted us and said, let's stop at the winery really quick, I could tell she was getting just a little irritated because she really did not want to miss the pumpkin patch. But we made it there just in time. I think their hours go until sunset. So whenever that is every day, that's when it closes. And we just happened to get there yesterday on their opening day, which was very fortuitous because this is a pick your own pumpkin patch. Now, they do have pumpkins that they have sorted and arranged. They're up at the front. And so if you don't want to go pick your own, they have pumpkins that are available to you in all kinds of sizes and colors. They have gourds. They have birdhouse gourds that I haven't seen in a long time. Beautiful white birdhouse gourds that were drying upside down. They have sheaths that are put together that you can use as part of your fall centerpiece or your fall staging outside of your home on your porch or what have you. In fact, I talked to the owner's grandson, wonderful little guy. He was about 12 years old. He happened to be working with the kettle corn, and he talked about how he put the sheaths together and going out there with a scythe and cutting it all down. So fascinating talking to him. And then my sister-in-law talked to the owner and got the scoop on the pumpkins. And they said, go into the patch, take a left, and go follow the road down through the dip. And if you go way to the back there, you will see all kinds of really awesome pumpkins. Some of them were blue, kind of a blue-green. I mean, just the most beautiful pumpkins with the most incredible ridges. I mean, we were just going crazy. And guess what? Every pumpkin, no matter how big or small, in that patch for the pick your own was $5. I mean, it was like a smorgasbord of pumpkins. It was unbelievable. And the variety. So let's see. There were the beautiful blue-green. I could not stop thinking about them. I went back this morning and got some for myself because I did not want to use up my trunk space. I wanted to let my brother and sister-in-law get the pumpkins that they wanted first because I'm close to there. I can go back anytime. But so we filled up the trunk, and I did get one pumpkin. Or actually, I got two. I got two pumpkins for myself. One I just called Big Bertha. Huge, beautiful, round pumpkin. I mean, just incredible. It's probably the nicest pumpkin I've ever gotten. And then one of the weirdest pumpkins I've ever gotten. In fact, I was looking up, Martha Stewart had this visual guide to pumpkins, and I think this is a French heirloom pumpkin, and you're supposed to have kind of this bumpy exterior and then have a little bit of orange sneaking through, and then more of this, it almost is like a rind, like a cantaloupe rind is what it looks like on the outside, but you're supposed to see some orange in between. Well, the one that I got was just loaded. It almost looked like, if you think of a peanut shell, it looked like it was covered in peanut shells. I just fell in love with it. My sister-in-law and my brother called it the brain pumpkin because it kind of looked like that. I just couldn't get it out of my mind. I'm like, I've got to grab that pumpkin. So those were the two that I got. They got incredible white pumpkins, orange pumpkins, every possible kind of orange pumpkins, blue pumpkins. One of the pumpkins, the bottom of the pumpkin looked like an elephant foot. It was just the craziest pumpkin. I'm like, well, I would set that thing upside down and let people see the bottom of it because it's just too spectacular. The top of it was nothing special, but the bottom of it, that's what I saw when I was going through the pumpkin patch. And I'm like, oh, that's the one. We've got to get that. We have to add that one. And of course, none of us were dressed to be going through a pumpkin patch. The soil was so incredibly soft. I would liken it to beach sand. I'm not kidding. Up there, it's sandy soil anyway, but this soil, oh my gosh, it was so incredible. What a wonderful place for these pumpkins to grow. It was tough to pull the wagon though. We were just loading up. We were going crazy buying pumpkins and then loading them in the car. And if my brother hadn't have been with, I would not have been able to get some of those pumpkins, or I wouldn't have been able to have anybody get them because I couldn't have lifted them. They were just way, way too big. Today, when I went back and got pumpkins for myself, honestly, I did not get these huge, huge pumpkins. I just can't deal with that. I can't lift them, navigate them, that kind of thing. And so I was just looking for variety. And I tell you what, I just continued to ooh and ah over those beautiful blue-green pumpkins. Oh my goodness. They are incredible. Let me see here. The white ones, I think, are called cotton candy pumpkins. Great name. Beautiful, beautiful pumpkins. The blue-green ones, I'm not sure of the variety there. On this little article that's posted on the Martha Stewart website, she says that some of the blue pumpkins of note, the varieties are named Blue Max, the Kaboka, the Kakai, which is popular in Japan, and then the Blue Lakota, which has an oblate spheroid shape. I don't think it was the Blue Lakota. I have to say, actually, there were a couple of them that were almost box-shaped, if you can believe that. They were just striking. So here's the deal. If you're in Minnesota, I have been to a number of orchards. They weigh the pumpkin, and you can spend a fortune on just a handful of pumpkins. But if you really want to have a fun outing, go up to Lentz in Wyoming, Minnesota. You can go out in the field, pick your own, any pumpkin, big, small, whatever color, anything you fall in love with, it's all $5. And if you don't want to go out in the field, they've got them individually priced. I think most of them were around $10 that I saw. So go check it out. They've got gourds of every possible thing. And they've got a beautiful hayride. It's not a haunted hayride. It's just a fun hayride. They've got some food trucks. They've got some fun stuff there. Really wonderful stuff for the kids. Unbelievable Halloween artwork. You'll have a blast. All right, that's it for all of my updates about the weekend here. Let's get to today's curated news. Today's curated news comes to us from the Royal Botanic Garden in Sydney, and this is a little article about the history of Sydney's Spring Walk. And apparently it is Australia's oldest continuous horticultural display. It's been on display for 163 years. It offers a variety of colors, flowers, and scents. And it's the garden that greets visitors every spring. Well, one of the fascinating little nuggets of history that gets shared in this article, and there are a ton of them, by the way, so this is a really fun read, but I just wanted to pluck this one out. I'll read you this, and then you can check it out for yourself. It says, in her 1943 satire, Ride on Stranger, Kylie Tennant wrote of an azalea-obsessed character who went with a trowel to the Botanic Gardens and, with the help of a fellow azalea lover, a priest with a big umbrella, had pinned down several shoots with hairpins until they rooted, and again, with the help of his ally in the big umbrella, had dug those furtive treasures from the ground and carried them away under his coat. Fun little excerpt. Anyway, if you would like to read this amazing article from the Royal Botanic Garden in Sydney, I've shared it in the Facebook group for the show. You can find it there. If you're not in the group, you can always join. Just search for the Daily Gardener Community, where you'd search for a friend in Facebook and then request to join. Be sure to answer the questions so that you can get into the group and I can make sure you're not a robot or a scammer. And if you're already in the group and you want to find this quickly, all you have to do is head on up to the very, very top. You'll see a little magnifying glass. You can click that and do any kind of search. You can search for the word Sydney, and this post will pop right up. All right, it's time for today's botanical history. Here's botanical history for today, September 20th. Well, it was on this day in 1552 that Lorenz Scholz von Rosenau, the German botanist, polyglot, or speaker of many languages, and physician, was born. He translated Greek and Arabic medical references along with other European texts, and he created a master medical reference, which was very needed back in 1552, as you might imagine. Now, this book that Lorenz wrote helped educate people about the plague, something folks were very concerned about at the time. In fact, this work earned Lorenz a coat of arms and a title, and so that's how he ends up being called Scholz von Rosenau. And I had to keep reminding myself that this was back in the 1500s, in a time when people were afraid of things like nightshade plants. And yet here we have Lorenz growing potatoes. Lorenz had a large 7-acre garden that he divided into 4 main quadrants, and then he connected those 4 big areas with paths. A man after my own heart. And right there in the middle of his garden, where all the paths converged, he built a large dining hall and art gallery to entertain his guests. So something on a much grander scale than just a greenhouse or a she shed, something we might see in gardens today. And today is the birthday of Mary Sophie Young. She was born on this day in 1872. She was an American botanist and explorer, and she was born in Glendale, Ohio. She had 7 older brothers who she credited for her toughness, and I think rightly so. After getting her PhD, Mary Sophie Young was put in charge of the Austin Herbarium in Texas. And one of the more interesting facts about Mary Sophie Young is that she concealed her gender by signing most of her correspondence and some of her work with M.S. Young. And she got a kick out of people who would write to her and, of course, assume that she was a man. She got a lot of respect that way, and she never let on. Now, during her career, she fell in love with botanizing in West Texas, and her work actually helped create a flora of Texas. On a 1914 trip, she wrote in her journal the following words: "It's about 5 o'clock now. The lonely time is beginning. The air is very transparent and very still, and everything glistens. There is something of that uncanny feeling of the consciousness of inanimate things." And today we wish a happy heavenly birthday to Florence Margaret Smith, who went by the pen name Stevie Smith. She was an English poet and novelist, and she was born on this day in 1902. Florence was recognized for her poetry. She won the Queen's Gold Medal for poetry for her work. Her life inspired a play called Stevie by Hugh Whitmore, and it was adapted into a film starring Glenda Jackson. Stevie once wrote, "Nothing is more wistful than the scent of lilac, nor more robust than its woody stalk. For we must remember that it is a tree as well as a flower. We must try not to forget this." It's time for today's Unearthed Words. Today's Unearthed Words come to us from Patricia Rezai. This is an excerpt from her book, Submerged in a Garden of Lust. July let me go with the sea. She stood there, handing me over to the future. I seemed farther than ever before. July, she watched me die under the arms of August. September lived in harmony. She took me by the hand and gave me one more chance. October, and a century of life. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, To Speak for the Trees by Diana Beresford Kroger. This book came out in 2019, and the subtitle is My Life's Journey from Ancient Celtic Wisdom to a Healing Vision of the Forest. A Canadian botanist, biochemist, and visionary, Diana won the 2019 Sigurd F. Olsen Nature Writing Award for this very book, which shares her family's Celtic ancestry, along with a deeper perspective on trees and their communities, what we call forests. Diana shares why trees matter, the role that they play in solving our climate change crisis, yes please, and a path toward a greater appreciation for these quiet giants of our planet. This book is 304 pages of a tree celebration and a cautionary plea to recognize and safeguard and utilize their value to all of us. You can get a copy of To Speak for the Trees by Diana Beresford Kroger and support the show using the Amazon link in today's show notes for around $16. Finally, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. Well, I've shared this before on the show, but it is a sentimental favorite of mine, and I'm doing it again today. Today is the birthday of Edgar Albert Guest. He was the British-American writer, columnist, and poet, and he was born on this day, September 20th, in 1881. Thanks to his happy, hopeful poetry, Edgar was beloved, and he became known as the people's poet during the first half of the 20th century. Now, this poem that I'm going to read to you today, I'm not going to read just an excerpt. I'm going to read the entire thing. It's one of my favorite poems. It's perfect for gardeners, and it's called To Plant a Garden. And it goes like this. If your purse no longer bulges and you've lost your golden treasure, if at times you think you're lonely, and if hungry grown for pleasure, don't sit by your hearth and grumble. Don't let mind and spirit harden. If it's thrills of joy you wish for, get to work and plant a garden. If it's drama that you sigh for, plant a garden and you'll get it. You will know the thrill of battle, fighting foes that will beset it. If you long for entertainment and for pageantry most glowing, plant a garden, and this summer, spend your time with green things growing. If it's comradeship you sight for, learn the fellowship of daisies. You will come to know your neighbor by the blossoms that he raises. If you'd get away from boredom and find new delights to look for, learn the joy of budding pansies, which you've kept a special nook for. If you ever think of dying and you fear to wake tomorrow, plant a garden. It'll cure you of your melancholy sorrow. Once you've learned to know peonies, petunias, and roses, you will find every morning some new happiness discloses. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener. And remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. The Daily Gardener is produced in lovely Maple Grove and Wyoming, Minnesota. If you want to read today's show notes, just head on over to thedailygardener.org. And while you're there, be sure to sign up for my free Friday newsletter. And don't forget that you have a standing invitation to join the free Facebook group for listeners of the show. Just search for Daily Gardener Community the next time you're on Facebook and request to join. Last but not least, you can always get in touch by emailing me at jennifer@thedailygardener.org. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling, and as always, have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you tomorrow.